Frankie Russo, yeah, straight out of Brooklyn. You better believe it. How you all doing? We got a big snowstorm coming down the pike, right? On Monday night, Tuesday. We got the NCAA brackets popping. Did I got it right? Do I have it upside down? Yeah, I do. So we got is that right up? Yeah, that's right. We got the bracket. Seton Hall, my alma mater, is in the south. They're facing Arkansas. So I'm pulling for the Hall. I'm a Big East guy. I'll show you my bracket tomorrow. This is the NCAA bracket. We're popping. I love this. This is great stuff. NCAA bracket. Can't wait. Get that down. And so we're going to move tonight. I got a few things. We're going to go down a pipeline. Russo disclaimer. Outside looking in. Court papers, judges' decisions, peer-reviewed journal articles, and open source, well-researched open source articles. I don't sit on any oversight committees. I don't sit on the International Atomic Energy Agency, Joint Chiefs of Staff, no National Security Council. I don't have access to classified documents. In all likelihood and all probability, we try to arrive to our conclusions in a very responsible, forthcoming way. Court papers, judges' decisions, peer-reviewed journal articles, well-researched open source articles. We search for statistical significance. In all likelihood and all probability, look for trends, inferences, patterns, and then we attempt to conceivably reach responsible conclusions. To see some of my blogs, you go to americasteam.today or frankierusso.media, 18-part series, The Obama-Clinton Crime Family, I believe is statistically significant. Okay, so Russo disclaimer. So we got a little quick sidebar. Assad calls U.S. forces invaders, but still hopeful on Trump. Assad. This is a Reuters article from Beirut. Syrian President Assad said U.S. forces in Syria were invaders, and that he had yet to see anything concrete emerge from U.S. President's vow to prioritize the fight against ISIS. Assad has said he saw the promise in Trump's statements emphasizing the battle against ISIS in Syria, while U.S. policy under President Barack Obama had backed some of the rebels fighting Assad, shunned them as illegitimate. This doesn't make sense. This is according to Reuters. U.S. policy under Obama had backed some of the rebels. They did, but it was 62 or 32, 8. They ended up giving the weapons to ISIS, the Sunni militia. Right? So under Obama had backed some of the rebels fighting Assad. Quite frankly, I believe you can argue that in actuality, because Obama shunned him as an illegitimate leader. This is not being responsible. I haven't read the whole article, but as far as this is not being responsible for Obama, no. Because in actuality, Obama made the rebels sign he made them sign a contract. We talk about this all the time. It was Chuck Hagel at the time was the Secretary of Defense, and he testifies on the Senate oversight committees that they signed a contract. They can't fire at the Assad regime, only at ISIS, right? So here's my question: who's ISIS, right? Because according to all the data we've come out with, and it's in the article we've been I'm gonna go over this article again, and then I'm going into the Sudan article, the Sudan case, the shadow commander, General Soleimani. According to the data and the data we put out on the material support, I forgot to finish the board. I'll do it tomorrow. The material support board. But anyway, so what we came out with, and I'm going to finish this board tomorrow. I got to finish this board. I did all my other paperwork, and I forgot to do the board. I just remembered. But anyway, so we came out with this New Yorker magazine that hates Trump. They hate Trump, okay? Mainstream media. The shadow commander, General Soleimani, is the Iranian operative who has been reshaping the Middle East. Now he's directing Assad's war in Syria. And if you, in all likelihood, no probability, if Obama, and according to Chuck Hagel, they had to sign a contract, the Syrian rebels, not to fire at Assad, but to fire at ISIS, the Sunni militia. Because if that's the case, then the Syrian rebels that we put together is actually fighting for Assad, is actually fighting for the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's what they're protecting. If they're protecting the Assad regime, they're protecting the Islamic Republic of Iran, because that's who Iran gives Syria 3 to 15 billion annually. So there. And to segue into this, I promised I would do an overview on this article, then we'll go into Sudan case with Omar al-Bashir. So basically, to give you a quick overview of the Soleimani article, the commander, September, it was issued, it was in the the New Yorker magazine issue, September 30th, 2013 issue, the Shadow Commander. So basically, this is General Soleimani. It starts at this senior official of the Quds Force, which is led by General Soleimani, Satori. And we found a powerful elite branch of the Revolutionary Guard Corps called the Iranian Quds Force. The force is the sharp instrument of the Iranian foreign policy, roughly analogous to a combined CIA and special forces. Its name comes from the Persian word for Jerusalem, which its fighters have promised to liberate. And then we know Satori, which is the best friends with, General Soleimani is this is where it starts, at his funeral, at Satori's funeral. Satori spent much of his career abroad, first in Afghanistan, then Iraq, where the Quds Force helps Shiite militia kill American soldiers, unfortunately. So this is the beginning. And basically, Satori had gone to Syria along with thousands of other members of the Quds Force to rescue the country's besieged President Assad, a crucial ally of Iran, the Quds Force chief, and he's the Quds Force chief in Lebanon. There, he had helped sustain the armed group Hezbollah. Okay, so now you get the connection there. Okay, to move this forward, what I found interesting, here's one Satori is the father of Ahmad Mujahideen, the Hezbollah commander believed to be responsible for the bombings that killed more than 250 Marines in Beirut in 1983. And in addition, the Satori belonged to a small fraternity formed during the Sacred Defense, the name given to the Iran-Iraq War, which lasted from 1980 to 88 and left as many as 1 million people dead. And we know it was a catastrophic fight, but for Iran, it was the beginning of a 3-decade project to build a Shiite sphere of influence stretching across Iraq to Syria to the Mediterranean. Along with its allies in Syria and Lebanon, Iran forms an axis of resistance arrayed against the region's dominant Sunni powers in the West. So this is, I'm just giving you an overview of the article we've been reading, the New Yorker article on General Soleimani, the Iranian Quds Force general. This is the overview. So according to Soleimani, we found out that he feels that the Syrian army is useless, absolutely useless. And in addition, Soleimani installed a national array of officers, the heads of Syrian military, the Hezbollah commander, a commander of and coordinator of the Iraqi Shiite militia, which Soleimani mobilized and brought to fight. This is the beginning of his fight. So I'm just going over the highlights of the article. It was a great article. I wrote a lot of interesting notes down, and I'm more excited to do further research from this article. And we got Iran's leaders took 2 lessons from the Iran-Iraq war. The first was that Iran was surrounded by enemies near and far, to the regime, the invasion was not so much an Iraqi plot as a Western one. And basically, they later provided him with targeting information used in chemical weapons attacks. The weapons themselves were built with the help of Western European firms. So, according to this article, American officials were aware of Saddam's preparation to invade Iran in 80, and they later provided him with targeting information used in the chemical weapons attacks. Okay, that's what this article is claiming. That I don't know how true that is. That we were aiding Saddam Hussein in his attacks in the Iran-Iraq war. I don't know how true it is. I got to look into that. But so that's where that's at. Now, the other lesson drawn from the Iran-Iraq war, which is the futility of fighting a head-to-head confrontation. In 1982, after the Iranians expelled the Iraqi forces, Khomeini ordered his men to keep going to liberate Iraq and push onto Jerusalem. 6 years and hundreds of thousands of lives later, he agreed to ceasefire. So they felt betrayed. The Iranian leaders felt betrayed. Many felt that they were stabbed in the back with the ceasefire. They had nurtured this myth for nearly 30 years, but the Iranian leaders didn't want another bloodbath. Instead, they had to build the capacity to wage asymmetrical warfare, which is what's going on for the last decade or so, attacking stronger powers independently outside of Iran, which Iran's been doing very well over the last decade at least. The Quds Force, okay, so that's where we're at, right? And we know the Quds Force was an ideal too. Khomeini created the prototype for the force in '79, protecting the goal with the goal of protecting Iran and exporting the Islamic Revolution. And we know that Hezbollah, the first big opportunity came in Lebanon. The Revolutionary Guards were dispatched in '82 to help organize Shiite militia in the many-sided Lebanese civil war, and the efforts resulted in the creation of Hezbollah, which was developed under Iranian guidance. And then we talk about this Ayman Mughajini, and this is the guy whose father is Satori, who opened up this article. He's a senior official of the Iranian Quds Force, the chief, the head of the Quds Force in Lebanon. With the assistance from Iran, Hezbollah helped orchestrate attacks on the American embassy, French and American military barracks. So they have been pretty much going at us for some time. Now, to move this forward, the Iranian regime has given aid to a variety of the Quds Force. The Quds Force regime has given aid to a variety of militant Islamic groups opposed to America's allies in the region, such as Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. The help has gone not only to Shiites, but also to Sunni groups like Hamas, helping to form alliances that stretches from Baghdad to Beirut. So here's the beginnings of this thing that we talk about, this Sunni Shia militia. And they talk about it indirectly in this article. The commander is the article, the commander, New Yorker Magazine article. They hate Trump, so you know that. So this is mainstream media. They don't like Trump. So this is not fake news. He gave his counterparts the location of an Al Qaeda. This is interesting. In addition, this American official said, this I'm taking excerpts from the article. He gave his counterparts. Who's he? Wait, who's he? Who said this? Here we go. The neighbor, the flow of information on one occasion. So this is okay. So this is an American officials talking about the. I'm just trying to put this in context. The American official is talking about he's talking about the Iranians and what he's hearing on the ground and what he's hearing from other foreign policy analysts in the region. He gave his counterparts the location of an Al Qaeda facilitator living in the eastern city of Mashhad of Iran. So there's an Al Qaeda facilitator living in Iran. So there's another more proof of a Sunni Shia nexus, Sunni Shia connection, Al Qaeda Iran connection, Afghan Taliban Iran connection, Sahan city of Iran, Mashhad They talk about Mashad and an Al Qaeda facilitator. After Saddam's regime collapsed, the information of governing council was in essence the negotiation between Tehran and Washington. Soleimani had sent operatives into Iraq to cultivate Shiite militias. When Saddam fell, he already had a fighting force in place, the Bad Brigade. So this Bad Brigade helped form the Supreme Council for the Islamic Revolution in Iraq. So that's another excerpt that's interesting. Now, so far, what I find interesting, okay, this is another. In 2004, the Quds Force began flooding Iraq with lethal roadside bombs that Americans referred to EFPs. The EFPs, which fire molten copper slug able to penetrate armor, began to wreak havoc on American troops, unfortunately. So this is, without question, according to Generals McChrystal, without question, these EFPs, the explosively formed projectiles, were coming from Iran. In addition, Soleimani's campaign against the United States crossed the Sunni-Shia divide, and we talked about this a few minutes ago. And there's more evidence that Assad regime to facilitate the movement of Sunni extremists through Syria to fight the Americans. In many cases, Al Qaeda was also allowed a degree of freedom in Iran as well. And the Americans received intelligence that Al Qaeda fighters in Iran were preparing to attack Western targets in Saudi Arabia, and they were there under Iranian protection, planning operations, and so they passed a warning. So basically, more evidence of the Sunni Shia militia, the Al Qaeda Iran nexus, the Afghan Taliban Iran nexus, the Hamas Iran nexus. So this is more evidence on that. This is an interesting excerpt. While the Kurds' relationship with the U.S. was usually warm, their ties to the Iranian leaders like Soleimani's were deeper and more complex. The Iranian regime had sheltered Iraq's Kurds during their war with Saddam, but there was never an equal relationship. Kurdish leaders say that Soleimani's objective have always been to keep Iraq's political parties divided and unstable, ensuring the country stayed weak. The Iran-Iraq war was never far from his mind. So I talked a lot about this on 77 WABC, and we talk about it a lot on the Scope show and on his YouTube live show, that Iran would rather have this Iraq be split in 3 different ways instead of having a focused Sunni militia running rogue all over the Middle East and North African region. They have no control over it. With Soleimani and hands and things, they have control. Interesting. And then we got McChrystal's orchestrated on defeating the Sunni insurgents. He focused on that. And then eventually, not wanting to get Iran involved, eventually, according to the article, McChrystal had to. So McChrystal's men tracked the convoy as it drove 100 miles into Iraq to the Kurdish city of Erbil, because what happened was they had taken, and I've spoken about this, they had stopped, which had a small sign called consulate. No one knew that such a consulate existed, but the fact is it did mean that the men inside were operating under diplomatic cover, and Americans moved in and took 5 Iranians into custody. All were carrying diplomatic passports. So this confirms what we talk about, because in 2006, so this is what it was. In 2006, before they took in 2007 the Iranians, they weren't focused on Iranians. According to this article, General McChrystal was focused on the Sunni militia. But then he found out that there were reports that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps might be in a convoy heading toward the Iraqi border, and it may be planning to do plan some attacks. General McChrystal's men they detained 5 Iranian Quds Force leaders, according to this article, right? And then we know that. So then we had the Soleimani's response was the Kabul attack, the Kabul the Kabul provincial center in southern Iraq was his response to this. So that went down. In hours, four captains were dead. Unfortunately, they went after, they just targeted the Americans, and they had men that spoke English, wore American style uniforms and flashed IDs, and they were allowed into the gate. So it sounds like the Quds Force playing games. Like this raid, according this raid was one of the Iranian-backed militias, and American officials speculated that Soleimani ordered the raid in response to the Erbil, the capture of the Quds Force operatives in Erbil, Iraq. So we got that. And how much more I got? Because I want to get to the other thing. All right, I got a little more. On the first day came another excerpt from the article. One of the first came early 2008 when Iraqi President Jalal Talabani had a cell phone with a text message to General David Petraeus. Dear General Petraeus, you should know that I am General Soleimani, control the policy for Iran with respect to Iraq, Lebanon, Gaza, and Afghanistan. And the ambassador in Baghdad is a Quds Force member, and the individual who's going to replace him is a Quds Force member. Now, Petraeus wrote in a White House report that Soleimani was purely evil. And in a speech, which we're going to talk about in the future, in a speech in 1990, Khomeini said that the mission of the Quds Force is to establish popular Hezbollah cells all over the world, although the goal has not been met, which is, I don't know if that's true or not. Hezbollah has become the most influential force in Lebanon. So that we're gonna, I tend to differ on that statement that was made, that it's not, I think we can argue that the Hezbollah is everywhere, and it's definitely in the West. They're definitely in the Western Hemisphere. Quite frankly, they're involved. There's been documents that tie them to the Fast and Furious controversy under the Obama administration. The Fast and Furious controversy. From 2010, 2006, Iran contributed $100 million to Hezbollah. Its fighters are attractive proxies, unlike the Iranians. They speak Arabic, making them better equipped to operate in Syria. The Quds Force appears to have involved a number of significant moments in Lebanon. One was the Nasrallah ordered a group of fighters to kidnap Israeli soldiers. The operation that the Middle Eastern security official told me was carried out with Soleimani's help. And then they have the assassination of Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri, and that was he's a Sunni, and that was a Hezbollah. That was a Hezbollah, right? That was a Hezbollah. Oh wait, that was a Hezbollah hit, right? Prosecutors identified the alleged Hezbollah assassins by means of a co-location analysis with the cell phone. And basically the theory of the case was that Hezbollah pulled the trigger, but couldn't and would not have done so without the blessing and logistical support from both Syria and Iran. So there it is. And one of them was Mustafa Badrine. Listen to this one. Ahmad Mukajini's, that's the son of Satori, Ahmad Mukajini's brother-in-law. You believe that? A long-time Hezbollah bomb maker. So that's that. And then we got, we're almost done. So I want to get to the Sudan. How much time I got? All right. Jeffrey and Austin didn't say the crucial deal that brought the Iraqi government together was not made by them, but by Soleimani. And then there's talk here that the United States government claimed that they were proud of the bringing this new Iraqi government together. But according to the article, what really went down was that Soleimani wanted America to leave, and what was really he picked Soleimani picked who the president was at the time. He became Jalal Talabani, and Maliki became the prime minister. And those were his two picks. So that went down. And according to this politician, let's see who we're talking to here. Ayad Al-Wali. He 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 ran for prime. I think it was prime minister or president. He ran for prime minister and he lost. Maliki won. And what's interesting is he calls Iraq a failed state, an Iranian colony. So I'm interested to see what's out on that. That I found an interesting statement. I've never heard that before. And according to what's a real interesting. Let's see. Oh yeah, Maliki's government is presiding over a number of schemes amounting to hundreds of millions of dollars to help the Iranian regime outwit Western economic sanctions. The Iranian-backed agents regularly use the Iraqi bank system to undertake fraudulent transactions that allow them to sell Iraqi currency at a huge profit. And also the Iranian oil is another stream of revenue for the Quds Force. The Quds Force uses so it's oil. So Maliki's government set aside equivalent 200,000 barrels of oil a day, which was worth $20 million. And the Quds Force sent the money at current prices and sent the money to Soleimani. So basically, it's a self-funding covert action program, and Soleimani doesn't even need the Iranian budget to fund it. And in addition, which I know it's in the article, the Iranian government gives Assad $7 billion in this article. The Iranian government loaned Assad $7 billion for their economy. It's in this article. Anything else? I think that's pretty much it. We had the regime is believed to have used the Assad regime is believed to have used chemical weapons at least 14 times since 2012. Yet even after the enormous sarin attack this past year, which killed 1,400 civilians, Soleimani's support for Syria has been unbending. Soleimani called on every asset he built since taking over the Quds Force, Hezbollah fighters, Shiite militia, all money and material he could squeeze out. So basically, but there was, what's really interesting was in December of 2012, which we can confirm why Soleimani, which maybe could be one confirmation of anyway, of why Soleimani went to Syria. Went to Russia in December 2012 when Assad's regime appeared close to collapse. So there was talk of Assad regime being. So we got some interesting stuff here. I'm all excited about this. I wrote some notes down, and I'm gonna do some more research to confirm it's really great article. Here's the article. I'll show it to you again. The Shadow Commander, a reporter at large, September 30th, 2013, New Yorker Magazine. No friend of Trump. They hate Trump. This is mainstream media. Dexter Filkins. So this is not fake news. The Shadow Commander, New Yorker Magazine, left wing. They don't like Trump. They hate Trump. So this is not fake news. Dexter Filkins. And when we call them out, like they said that Hezbollah didn't achieve what Khomeini wanted them to do, which I don't know, man. I think we can argue that it did. So before we go, I want to get started on this other article, on this case, not even an article. Oh yeah, by the way, did you guys see a little sidebar? Did you see, did I show this? Did you see Assad's, Julian Assad, this is the New York Post, this is Julian Assad, right? And they're claiming, Julian Assad, the New York Post, today's Post, claiming that his girl is Pamela Anderson. I didn't even know that. I just found that out today. Pamela Anderson. It's crazy. I don't know. Something to check out. Okay, that's another little sidebar. Okay, United States District Court, James Owens versus the Republic of Sudan. So we're going to start with this. Okay, Real Deal Holyfield. We're going to start with a little paragraph, and we'll continue with this tomorrow. Okay, I got this off Investigative Project. So basically, the judge, John D. Bates of D.C., found that both Iran and Sudan were involved in Al Qaeda's 1993 bombing in U.S. embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. In ruling, Bates wrote, the government of Iran aided, abetted, and conspired with Hezbollah, Osama bin Laden, and Al Qaeda to launch large-scale bombing attacks against the United States by utilizing the sophisticated delivery mechanisms of powerful suicide truck bombs. Hezbollah, a terrorist organization based principally in Lebanon, had utilized this type of bomb in the devastating 1983 attacks on the U.S. Embassy and Marine barracks in Beirut, where they killed over 200 Marines, unfortunately. Prior to their meetings with Iranian officials and agents, bin Laden and Al Qaeda did not possess the technological expertise required to carry out the embassy bombings in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. So this is where we're starting. So here's where an instance in 1988 where Osama bin Laden is coming, his name is popping up. This is before he was an unindicted co-conspirator, and Osama bin Laden was an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. So from 93 to 2001, where we had that horrific hit on the World Trade Center, in 98, it's coming in this case, James Owens versus the Republic of Sudan. So I'm going to go to the findings. I got the decision. So I got the findings of fact. Okay, we're going to read it and see where it takes us. I'll read a paragraph or two. The government of the Islamic Republic of Iran has a long history of providing material aid and support to terrorist organizations, including Al Qaeda, which had claimed responsibility for the 1998 embassy bombings. Iran has been the preeminent state sponsor of terrorism against the United States interests for decades. Regarded as Al Qaeda as a useful tool of destabilize U.S. interests. As discussed, the government of Iran aided and abetted and conspired with Hezbollah, Osama bin Laden, and Al Qaeda to launch large-scale bombing attacks against the United States by utilizing the sophisticated delivery mechanisms of powerful suicide truck bombs. Hezbollah, a terrorist organization based principally in Lebanon, had utilized this type of bomb in the devastating 83 attacks on the U.S. Embassy, and where they killed hundreds of Marines. Prior to the meetings with Iranian officials and agents, bin Laden and Al Qaeda didn't possess the technical expertise required to carry out the embassy bombings in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. Iranian defendants through Hezbollah provided explosives training to bin Laden and Al Qaeda and rendered direct assistance to Al Qaeda operatives, hence for the reasons discussed below. Okay, now we're going to get into here once again the Iranian government's relationship with Hezbollah. Iranian support of Hezbollah began in the 80s, if not directed. Remains designated as a state sponsor of terror. Iran, the Iranian government, and the Iranian intelligence service provided substantial financial support and a lot of other service to Hezbollah. And I cite their footnotes. They had their footnotes. They cite their sources. At all times relevant to this case, Iran was a state sponsor of terror that supported terrorist groups that U.S. intelligence agencies believed were capable of attacking U.S. interests. The declassified 1991 national intelligence estimate produced by the CIA stated that Iranian support for terrorism will remain a significant issue dividing Tehran and Washington. Tehran is unlikely to conduct terrorism directly against U.S. or Western interests during the next, but is supporting radical groups that might do so. There it is. Hezbollah possessed extraordinary knowledge of explosives, and Iran trained Hezbollah to counterintelligence and explosive capability, such that Hezbollah is often described as the A-team of terrorists. Hezbollah operatives were trained in Iran. Iranian Liberation Guard Corps were present in Lebanese Hezbollah training camps. Indeed, as terrorism expert Evan Coleman testified, Hezbollah is a proxy force of Iran. Its primary foreign sponsor is Iran, both financially and otherwise. Almost all of Hezbollah's activities are well known to the Iranian government, and in some cases, they are planned by the Iranian government. Okay, I'm going to read this paragraph, and then we're gonna call it. Okay, in the 1990s, Iranian support for terrorism groups extended beyond Hezbollah to Al Qaeda. Dr. Matthew Levitt, an expert witness on the state sponsorship, the state sponsorship of terrorism, especially Iran, Hezbollah, and Al Qaeda, explained how Al Qaeda came into contact with the Iranian government. Hassan al-Turabi, the head of the National Islamic Front, who ruled Sudan at the time, was keen not only on instituting Islamic Sharia law in Sudan at home, but in making the Sudan a place which worldwide Islamic revolution could flow. To the end, Hassan al-Turabi hosted numerous meetings, some large summits, and with radical extremist groups, including one, for example, like Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Egyptian Islamic Jihad, Al Qaeda, Sudanese radicals, Iranians, Lebanese, Hezbollah were all invited and attended. Such a conglomeration of different terrorist groups and governments, such as Iran, had been very unusual prior to al-Turabi's conferences. And it was at these meetings where Iranian officials, Hezbollah officials, Al-Qaeda officials, and others first began to have some serious meetings. Several meetings took place between representatives of Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, and governments of Sudan and Iran. The purpose of these meetings, in the words of a ranking Al-Qaeda Sharia Council member, Abu al-Awraqi, was to focus on a common enemy, that being the West. Al-Turabi's policies therefore resulted in the exchange of ideas, sharing of resources by groups that would not necessarily have communicated otherwise, including Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. The Iranian government played a very active role in Sudan during the time that bin Laden operated from Khartoum. That's where al-Bashir is from, Omar al-Bashir. This included playing a prominent role in a conference of those resisting the Israeli-Arab peace process, which had been organized by the Sudanese government. Hezbollah also had a base of operations in Khartoum, Sudan. Interesting. Very interesting. Iran's role in Sudan grew at the same time that the Sudanese government invited bin Laden to Khartoum. Al-Turabi invited the president of Iran. Oh, this guy passed away. Hojatol Islam, to visit Sudan in '91 to support al-Turabi's goal of mending the Sharia Sunni divide in Islam in order to present a united front against the West. Iran also maintained a delegation office in Khartoum that was run by Sheikh Nomani to facilitate relations between the governments and convert Sunni Arab Muslims to the Shia sectarian view. The two governments shared information and intelligence between their militaries and intelligence services. This is unbelievable. So I read like quite a few paragraphs. I'm going to read more of this, and I'm going to get some highlights on this thing. So we did a few things tonight. I'm going to clean the board up, and tomorrow I'm going to do a new board, and we'll have a new board tomorrow. I went through the highlights again on the Shadow Commander, so I did this today. The Shadow Commander, I finished it. We did the overviews. I got 3 or 4 things out of this article I want to do more research on. I'm going to go back on the Sudan. I'm going to do a little more on the Sudan. We're going to continue with the Sudan, get into all the things over here. I'll have the material support board, and we'll see what's going on, the current events of the day. Okay, this is the Frankie Russo show. I'm gonna go scope in about 5 minutes live for an hour for an hour or two, and we'll call it a night. Okay, Frankie Russo show. Yeah, 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 yeah. We were on for almost an hour, I think. This is the Frankie Russo show. I'll see you in the future.